That's awesome. Chris, thank you for leading us. I feel like appreciate our team there. I feel like you pastored us through that. That was good. That was just that God that puts it all in perspective. Doesn't worship do that? That is so opportunity for us to come together like this, and especially if you're here in the room as well as those are online. We're just glad you've joined in with us this morning together. I don't know what time you're watching this or what day or where you're at, but it's beautiful in Birch Bay, Washington, Sunday morning here. Love it. What a great day we be together. But I want to take why this is also a great day is that we're taking an opportunity to recognize a group of people that are really important to us, and that's our veterans. And so this coming Wednesday is Veterans Day. And so is there anybody in the room? Can you raise your hand if you served in our armed forces? Thank you, sir. Anybody else in the room? I didn't want to miss anybody. Anybody have a spouse that served in the military? Okay. So we just thank you for your service, sir. And yes, let's give him a hand. And maybe you're watching online and you serve. Thank you. Men and women that have made an incredible amount of sacrifice, even though maybe you haven't experienced, thankfully maybe you didn't experience real conflict. It's a sacrifice that's there for our country and protecting us, and so deeply grateful for you. So we just want to take this moment before we jump into the message to welcome you if you're new here with us or you're watching online. We'd love to connect with you. And a couple of ways we do that is on the online experience, we have a connect with us. You can fill out that pull down and do that. But really, the text line that we have really does work. So just respond that way. And what we mean by responding is if you've got a prayer request, if you have a need of something, you have a question about what's going on and what's happening, maybe you heard something in the message or, wanting further information on being in a small group or how do I give or how do I do these kind of things, we love to help you that way. And there's people operators are standing by. Now, throughout the week, though, if you text, even not only today, but throughout the week, put that in your phone. So it's a great way we can stay connected that way. You also go to our website and go that approach as well. But I mentioned giving. I just want to take a moment. Thank you. I put the sign back here, grateful. We are grateful for in this season while you are being very faithful, many of you that give in your tithes and giving your offering to the Lord. And we're just thank you for that we can not only kind of keep the lights on and get some kind of heat in this building, but and take care of the needs here locally, but we have the opportunity. What ends up happening when we give, it creates opportunity, causes that we're able to give to and do. And so if you are new to giving and want to give, you can go to the online. You can do that through our website, as well as if you're here in the room, there's some black boxes on the way that you can drop that in. But the reason we can do what we do, not just kind of keep things here, to reach out is because of your faithfulness. And so as we do that and continue to be generous in this holiday season, is we have what is called the Thanksgiving Baskets through Blaine Blaine Assistance Program. And so we want to invite you to participate again this year. It's a little bit different this year. They're not receiving gifts of food or anything. They're actually wanting it because of COVID, come in the form of monetary giving. And so if you go to blainecap.org, there you can give directly to do that. You don't do it through Northbay, do it directly there. But also, if you know somebody that's in need, it would be great, especially all that's happened this year, for them to receive a Thanksgiving dinner. Point them to that. You can go there and how to register to receive a meal. Or you're here in the room or you're watching online going, it's been a tough year. We probably could use something like that. We would love to have you connect with them and give. We give to help you. And so we want to take the opportunity to do that. So there's a way that we can be generous in us, and God's so generous to us and through us. And so I want to take advantage of that opportunity to give. And you're going to hear more, some opportunities ahead here in the next week about generosity. And all the things are going on. You can go to our Facebook and Instagram, and we'll try to keep things updated throughout the week. And feel free to like that and post things. We want to continue to stay in connection just, again, throughout the week. Now, what a week, huh? What a week we've had, and it's been election week, and it's like, I don't think anybody's surprised, are you, when it comes to like the chaos and craziness and everything that's happened? It's like, that's 2020. But I would say there's just some here today, or maybe you're watching online, you're very happy with the results. There's some here today, they're not very happy with the results. But it's okay. God's on the throne. God's in control. God has whoever he has in office, it's his plan and his purposes, what he's doing. And we have an opportunity, especially in this 2020 and all that's going on, that we can not just rise above it, but we can be involved in doing his will and the opportunity that we have. And so however you feel, sad or glad or whatever here is, recognize this, that we've been talking in this series of what you can do is that we have so much we can do as the body of Christ. We really do, don't we? God is at work. There's so tremendous things that he has us involved in it. So if you're so happy and excited and looking forward, or you're struggling, knowing that Bible says this, we can do all things through him who gives us strength. There's so much to do. And so today what we're going to talk about peace. Not only receiving peace, but really focusing on this opportunity is to bring peace, that we can bring peace. Now, I want to frame this a little bit as we talk about it. You know, Facebook's funny. You like, oh, there I was, so many years ago. 5 years ago this week, myself and a group of us from North Bay were across the other side of the world in Israel, the Holy Land. We had a great tour. For me personally, it was the first time being there. It was like a personal pilgrimage to walk, literally, think about this, walking literal steps of the footsteps of Jesus. Like, wow, there's nothing better than that. It was pretty amazing. And if you ever want to go on a trip, let me know when all this blows over, hopefully someday, whatever the world's going to look like next. But I hope we can go back there. I hope we can take a trip to do that. But there was one particular day that kind of showed up on the reminder, was a day where we went up. It was called the Golan Heights. And as you travel up, our bus goes up this windy road. On the right and on the left, you saw burned out tanks. And you're like, oh, we don't see those in Whatcom County. Burned out tanks along the way. Where are we going? And it's this museum up there, and it's a national park. And it has some history of the wars and things that happened up there. And you get up there, and there's a coffee shop and a gift shop. Just in the middle of nowhere. It's really funny. And so we grab some coffees, and then we go to the edge. It's on the edge of Israel and it's in Syria. And we're looking over, and our guide goes, listen carefully. You can hear bombs going off, and you see little pillars of smoke from the distance. In Syria, the Syrian civil war is going on. And here we are drinking our coffee casually as a war is going on like it's no big deal. And then there was some NATO peacekeeping forces that were there, kind of posted along the border there. They're in the park, and some of our group members are like, can we take a selfie with you with the NATO? And I'm like, and then our tour guide's like, okay, we got to go. We got to schedule to get back in the bus. And we're going back down the hill and going, okay, things are wrong at multiple levels. Like how casual we were about a civil war going on down below, and we're just drinking coffee and talking about it. We got to move on to our next little sightseeing tour. And it just kind of hit me. I'm going, that's not right. And I thought about that in our world that we live in, that we're in the midst of violence, both which you watch and entertainment. We get confused as all the gunfire goes on and everything that happens. And okay, that whole scene, like everybody, they're shooting all over and no one died. How did that happen? To then there's real life in the news, but it's in a distance, in a faraway land, and what's happening, and we're desensitized. We're kind of like bystander onlookers over what's going on over there. Poor people over there. And yet, when it's our son and it's our daughter or mom or dad, when tragedy hits close, it's a completely different place, isn't it? And I was thinking about this whole peacekeeping. There's peacekeepers along the way. I'm thinking, you know what? As followers of Jesus, we're not called to be just peacekeepers. We actually have this vision to be, as Jesus says, peacemakers. And I want to touch on this morning on beyond just peacekeeping, that we're just to keep the peace, to have this indifferent approach to where things are and what's going on, to there's a work that we're called not just to keep the peace, but to make the peace. Jesus made this clear in his inaugural speech at the start of his ministry called the Sermon on the Mount. He says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." That's probably pretty familiar for you, but I love the Message version, how it reads. I thought this was interesting. It says, you're blessed when you show people how to cooperate instead of compete or fight. That's when you discover who you really are, your place in God's family. It's really saying, listen, There's a work. In fact, your identity as my follower is wrapped up in how you're to cooperate, how you're to provide, be a peacemaker. In the world that seems very competitive and fighting and divided all the time, there is a work that you can do, and that is that you have a job as followers of me to make peace, to actually bring peace. Paul goes on later in the early church. He challenges the church in Rome. He says this: if at all possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. If all possible, if there's any way you can do this, if there's any way you can make this and help people and encourage people toward peace, do that. That's the work. That's the work that we're called to do. And so today's truth we're going to unpack is to be proactive by bringing peace. Proactive by bringing peace. Now, before we kind of get to be a peace, not keeper, but a peacemaker, I want to give this in some practical thoughts. But before we do that, I would like to just unpack peace a little bit. Because what does peace really mean? In fact, I got the question here: how do you picture peace? So I picture peace in a variety of ways. Many times I get kind of caught up in the aesthetics. And you can't help but not have a peaceful morning with the beautiful sunshine we've had. And, I got up early and getting ready, and I go through kind of a prayer routine. And, times I'm going to different places. And I love being able to go. And this morning I went out to the Spit. And I was able to see the sunrise this morning. Unbelievable. Some of you last night saw the sunset last night. It was on fire. I reminisce about summer. I hate to admit it. I miss summer. It's sweater weather. I miss summer. I remember going out on my kayak and just past Point Whitehorn, and then the sunset dropped at that moment. I was like, oh, it was so good. I like peaceful moments. I think you do too. You like it when you're in your setting and everything. But the reality is that's not true peace, is it? You know that it's not. Aesthetically, that is. Because what happens is we could have all the aesthetics right in our life outside of us, but there's really no peace inside of us. We can get caught up in trying to live this perfect little life, and yet we struggle with really truly what peace is. Jesus tells us this. He says this of what's true peace. He says this. He says, peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your heart be troubled, and do not be afraid. What's peace he's talking about? Not peace of just the aesthetics of peace and what we think of peace and everybody getting along, though that's part of peace. There's a deep peace that's available that I have that you can experience. And Paul talks about later this peace that passes all understanding, that guards our heart and mind in Christ Jesus. The peace what the world gives. Well, it's different than his peace. In Greek there, that peace, it's called a state of peace. The Hebrew language, they use the word, and in Jewish culture, they call it shalom. You've heard of shalom, peace. When we were in Israel, we greet one another. Hi and bye was shalom. I thought that was pretty cool. Like, peace to you, peace to you. Maybe you've been in traditional churches where they say peace to one another. It's a beautiful thing to say. But shalom means so much deeper than just offering peace. In fact, I love this definition of shalom, of true peace. God's peace is it's a multidimensional, complete well-being, physical, psychological, social, and spiritual. It flows from out of one's relationship being put right with God within ourselves, or within ourselves, and with others. So we got to recognizing that not only peace with God, peace with others, but peace with others. And if we don't have peace with ourselves, most likely it's because we don't have peace with God and peace with others. And so in a moment here, we're going to talk about bringing peace. You can't bring what you don't have. Do you have that peace? Do you have that peace of Christ? Be asking yourself that question, do you truly have that, before you be able to bring that. I want you to know at the end, we're going to have an opportunity to pray for that peace. Not only to bring peace, but to experience that peace. But the shalom, it was something that was created by God at the very beginning in the garden. When it says that Adam and Eve became one flesh, they were naked, but they were not ashamed, and everything was perfect. It was the perfect ultimate shalom. But of course, when they sinned, it broke that shalom. It broke that peace that was there. And so it brought strife. It brought, through the curse, it brought war and hostility between us and God. But an enmity, it actually said, the curse was between us and one another that was happening. And so all this is going on, and some people try to, bring that peace and through, but it ended up through war and more problems and more issues and more strife that continued on. But then God, there was a moment in time that he looked over all humanity, and he didn't go drink his coffee and go, oh, wow, that's a bummer for those people and that war that's going on. No, he looked down in the valley and he saw the chaos of this earth. He says, I've got to do something. And he brought his perfect peace that passed understanding through Christ. And Jesus became the ultimate peace deliverer, the peacemaker, shalom representative that we needed, and the work he accomplished. Because Jesus, even in moments where he looked over the city of Jerusalem, and the Bible said he wept like a sheep. They looked like a sheep without a shepherd. But in his compassion, it led to action. And I love what Paul describes. If you want to get the real true understanding of Christ and the gospel and what he did, is what he says in Ephesians. Follow along with me as I read this. It says, but now in Christ Jesus, you who once were far away have been brought near by the blood of Christ. For he himself is our peace, who has made the two groups one and has destroyed the barrier, the dividing wall of hostility, by setting aside in his flesh the law with its commands and regulations. His purpose was to create in himself one humanity out of two, thus making peace in one body, to reconcile both of them to God through the cross, by which he put to death their hostility. He came and preached peace to you who are far away and peace to those who are near. For through him we both have access to the Father by one Spirit. Now that's a mouthful there, and that's very thick in theology. So understand this, what Paul's saying is, no peace, no Jesus. No Jesus, no peace. That's the work that Christ did, is provided peace between us and God, the breaking down the walls of hostility, breaking around the separation, the chasm is there, and being this bridge for us to experience this work that he did. And so if you're here today and you don't have that peace, or you're watching, don't click away yet, because we want to say, here's a peace available to you that only comes through Jesus and through what he did on the cross. And he says this, to make the two one. Of course, it's speaking of the Jews and the Gentiles coming together as one, and that represented the church coming together as one. And so if you're a follower of Jesus and you got Christ in you, you have that peace that Christ provides, that true peace. But the question is, do we have peace with one another? Not always, do we? There's a challenge that we have. And I would just challenge us in a very divided world we live in a very divided United States that we live in, because it speaks in our context. And you know the division. You saw the numbers. You saw the votes. You saw all of that. And the separations there. The divided states of America right now does not mean that the church has to be divided as well. We're called to be one. We're called to be one, and in that we're called to do something greater that we're going to get to. But we live in divided times, and unfortunately that continues on. And I tell you that when the church is strong, it's amazing. But when it's not good of division. My friend Brady, who pastors downtown CTK, he says this: the church united is pervasive and powerful. The church divided is powerless and pitiful. And so we have a choice in that. Back in 1963, Martin Luther King, he said this: it's appalling that the most segregated hour of the Christian America is on Sunday morning. And we think, oh, well, it's gotten better over the years. Not really. They did a poll of evangelical churches a couple years ago, and that 86% of churches are segregated on different ethnic groups. They're segregated out. Now, what's that mean? Well, it's not just, it's segregated ethnically, but in color. It's segregated also at times as social, economic, or political separations. There's past prejudice that come in where, okay, they live this way and they're coming in the church, but do you know how they live and all that? All that goes on in the world we live in, and it does affect our church. And so what happens sometimes, let's admit it, we can kind of feel helpless. We can kind of feel like in 2020, but we don't have to be. We can actually do something about it. We can actually bring peace, to bring the shalom of Jesus to a deeply divided and broken world. It's actually, the primary work is disciple makers. You're thinking, where's that? What are you talking? What is that? We got instructions here. Paul gives us some instructions of this challenge to bring peace. See, you could read these as a charge, as almost like a coach going in on the field and saying, team, this is the play that we're going to call. And it says this in Corinthians. It says, all this is from God. All this meaning, all that Jesus did in providing this peace and bringing oneness. He says, who reconciled himself through Christ and gave us. What did he give us? Gave us, he says, this ministry of reconciliation. And some of you are like, you're following Jesus, you're watching like, I have a ministry? I didn't know I was in the ministry. Yeah, you're in the ministry. You and I several years ago, someone asked me about the church and what we're doing, and they asked me, how many ministers are in your church? And I said, well, a few hundred. He goes, wow, it's a big church. This minister is not me with a reverend title or anything like that. It's that we're, as believers, are called, and specifically called to a ministry of reconciliation. Now, that's interesting. What is that? Well, it's not just peacekeeping, but peacemaking. There's an active work, the work of reconciliation. The word reconciliation is interesting. We'll get to it here in a moment. But it says, Paul goes on, he says this. He says that the God who is reconciling the world to himself in Christ, not counting people's sins against him. And the work of reconciliation, I'm back when I was in college, I was 19, and I don't know, I really had a bad streak of driving. I ended up getting 3 tickets in like 6 months, okay? And 2 were a speeding ticket. Once I got in an accident, it was my fault. And I tell you what, that does not do well for your car insurance. And I had to live for 5 years of these tickets until they were, removed from my record. I had a record to go there. And some of you are like, dude, I have a bigger record. I get that. I understand that. But for me, that was a bummer because it seemed like my rent was cheaper than my car insurance. And it was really hard. Some of you know what that feeling like of your past and everything that's happened to you. And I love the fact that Jesus, the moment we receive Jesus, the moment that our sins are forgiven, our slate is washed clean. He doesn't go back and go, well, we're going to have to hang you out for 5 years on what you've did and rest. Nope, it's clean. And I want to challenge us, if God cleaned the slate, why don't we do that with other people? He did it. There's a work of reconciliation. And so Paul gives us job description. He says, he has committed us to the message of reconciliation. The message. Now, what's that word reconciliation? It's an accounting term, to make it right. Like you spent this money and then you have money to account for that spending. To balance your books, right? Balance your checkbook. Do that. But it's more than just money. It's a relationship. It's consistent, an idea of restoring fully in relationship. And so Paul's saying you got the ministry, or now he says the message of reconciliation. Well, what's the message? What's the gospel? Jesus came, died, rose again, invites us to follow him, to cleanse us of our sins, and that we can have an eternal life with him because of what he accomplished. That's the message that we are called to give and to bring to people. He goes on further about this work. He says this, that we are therefore Christ's ambassadors, as though it was God who was making his appeal through us. We implore you on Christ's behalf, be reconciled with God. He's saying, so this is our work we're doing. Are you, challenge you to be reconciled with God? And he says, God who made him no sin to be sin for us, so that in him we become the righteousness of God. He's saying that's the work of Christ. That's the message that we're to proclaim for people to get right with God, to reconcile and make things right with God, so they can experience the perfect shalom of peace that's available. But guess what? Your job is to be ambassadors to do that. The work of ambassadors You think of our ambassadors that go to different countries and negotiate and settle relations to make peace across the table, across enemy lines, in fact. I love what it says in I don't know if we have it on the screen there, but in the message about this ministry, it says that God has given us this task of telling others what he's doing. We're Christ's representatives. God uses us to persuade men and women to drop their differences in entering God's work of making things right between them. We're speaking for Christ himself now, becoming friends with God. He's already a friend with you. There's this work he's calling us to bring peace. There's a work they're calling to bring parties together. There's a work across the aisle and across the table and across the room to bring people together. So in the way it's working is this is, hey, Bill, Kathy, have you met my friend Jesus? Jesus, you probably know Bill and Kathy already, but they need to know you, and I think you guys would hit it off really well. That's spiritual networking. Some of you have done that in social settings. You need to meet. And guess what? That's the work we're called to do. It doesn't mean that Bill and Kathy are going to pray the prayer and do all that. Well, hopefully, eventually, they will come to Christ. But our work is building this, really, a bridge. And that's what I want to challenge us here, is how do we build, if we're called to bring the peace. I don't know if you can argue with me, but I can't argue with Scripture. It's the call, the work we have. How do we do that? How do we be a bridge? This last year, I want to make sure not be the bridge. Jesus is the bridge, but to be this bridge. I was reading this book called Be the Bridge by Letitia Morrison. It was really helpful. It's an African-American woman who just Christian. She wrote this book to help us understand, and it really, really helped me understand Black history. And she was sharing about World War II with how the Japanese were treated and all that was going on in our United States. And it just gave me perspective that was really, really helpful. It gave me a biblical perspective of understanding racism and understanding all that's going on. There's multiple books I've read, but it was really, really good. But I love the concept she had was to be a bridge. There's an active work that we can do. And why is that work? Well, Paul says it. If all possible, if it all depends on you, as much as you can, bring peace with everyone. How do we do that? Here's some bridge building thoughts to do that. And when I want you to think about this, I want you to think about the people in your life, as we talk about this, that are different than you. There are people in your life right now, and you've seen it already. It's already shown up in who voted, and who's happy, and who's sad. It's the people that have a different political sign in your argument than you do. The conversation you're going to have possibly at work this week, or people with your family or extended family that you have, that they have a different view of things. How are you approaching them this week? Well, that's them. Well, no, there's a work of bringing peace. It might not just be politically. It might be lifestyle. It might be a view of other things that are going on and how they live and how you live. There's a variety of things that can bring division to one another. But here's this work that God's called us to do, to practice being a bridge builder. First, I would say is to be a listener and a learner. Be a listener and a learner. It's very practical to say, I'm going to listen. Went back in several years ago before coming here, I was working in a school with special needs students for a year. And I would say that I learned more from them than me for providing anything. But I was working with this young man, this boy. I would tell him, his name was Daniel. I said, Daniel, it's time to move on to the next activity. And he would do this. He was 14 years old, but he was a little kid. And I thought, okay, that's totally rude. But his filter was not there. We don't normally do that when we don't want to hear. Speak to the hand, right? We don't want to hear it, but we'll tune people out. As soon as they go down that road, oh yeah, I don't know. I don't hear it. I don't want to hear it. You don't want to hear from me and my views? No. All right. And what happens is you felt that before. Now, how do you feel about how will you do that with others? And what I've learned is, God's given us two ears and one mouth for a reason, right? To listen twice as much as to talk. I love what it says in James. It says, be quick to listen, slow to become angry. But listen to this version in the Message. It says, lead with your ears, Follow with your tongue and let anger straddle along in the rear. God's righteousness does not grow from human anger. We're just going to go at it. Okay, how's that going to work out for you? Probably not always that great. When we begin to listen and understand and begin to process a little bit more, we can grow in appreciation, at least in who they are. But here's the thing. We're all biased. We all have our biasness. And I picture biases, and I got this picture this week. The bias is like a backpack that we carry in life. And what's in our backpack is both tools and resources that can help other people that we've learned and grown. We have a lot to offer. But also in our backpack is a bunch of liabilities. There's a bunch of baggage that we carry in our life, and the things that we have, they're not helpful for people, but that's our bias. And we bring it in there. Some of it's good, some of it's bad, but this is who we are. You go into a marriage, there's liabilities and there's assets. You go into relationships, that's the way. So we got to come into it and approaching it that way. And so what we need to do in our bias is to say, okay, how do I back away from my bias and just listen? And this is what I've done when people tell me something like, wow, I just go, wow. I tell you, wow works really good. Just go, wow. Because what I do when I hear it, I go, okay, that gives me some time. I use wow, and then it lets me process what I'm going to say and how I'm going to respond next. And this is what I try to do when I'm going. I say, help me understand your perspective. Tell me more about that. And I become curious rather than judgmental when I do that. Tell me more. Ask questions. Give me understanding. And they dig down, and maybe in your mind go, they're digging themselves in a grave right there. That's a bad way to go. But let them reveal that. Let them do that. That's great counselors. You've done that. Some of you spend $100 an hour going, they just ask me questions. Yeah, but you learned a little bit about yourself. And that's the same way. Ask questions in care, and as we do that. And what happens is that you begin to understand someone who voted differently than you. You begin to understand from their perspective why they think the way they do. You begin to get a place, and I tell you, in that, when you come out with this bridge building, that somehow you become a person they can trust. And when that happens, guess what? There comes a powerful thing that we can do. And in fact, effective bridge building is to be empathetic even when it's not your experience. When you hear someone's story, I heard it just the other day. My daughter and I were talking about this, and I think it was her friend. I've had it in other places where a person says, if you voted for that guy, you're not my friend anymore. And we're like, well, that's, world. People out there say that. No, that was a church goer or a church watcher that said that to me and said she had that of a friend. I'm like, really? I'll tell you what, I'll be your friend no matter who you voted for. I'll be your friend no matter what you do, because there's a work. Now, is there a challenge with those friendships? Absolutely. I'm not negating that. But to be reconcilers, to be ambassadors of Christ, there's a work. So people can deny the facts, but they can't deny your story. Oh, that didn't happen to you. No, it did. Let me tell you, if we're authentic and real with our story and allow other people to authentic, real their story, we begin to understand one another, and bridges be built. And what we end up doing actually is this. We begin to see people as God sees them in his image. When God looks at him, it's not the political party he's looking at, it's not the lifestyle he's looking at, it's not the gender he's looking at. He is looking at that very soul, the image of God, who they are. And if we value people at that level as God values you, it's amazing what the Lord can do and all that. Is there complications in relationships? No question about that. But the very core, the very value that we put in, Jesus personified this. When he treated people, everybody he saw as sacred, whether they're disguised as rich or poor or beggar or healthy, unhealthy, Gentile, Jew, he gave honor and dignity to a man, to a woman. In fact, I love this story and the narrative. It just hit me the other day about the resurrection. The first people, talk about honoring women. Back in the day, women were they're considered chattel. They weren't even considered, ladies, it's hard to believe that they were considered property. And here he goes to a woman at the well. And and I was going to say before that, he at the resurrection, the first people he told about his resurrection was women. Go tell the rest of the guys I rose from the dead. But here in John 4, where Jesus meets the woman at the well, all these barriers Talk about building bridges. He broke through all these barriers. That, he was a Jew and she was a Samaritan. He was a man, she was a woman. He was a rabbi, religious dude, and she was living immoral. And Jesus did this work. He built this bridge and spent time and listened to her and heard her story. Did he, as who he was? Yeah, he confronted some things in her life and had some pretty serious conversation. But you know what? It's interesting about that. She didn't get offended by that. Forget you. I'm out of here. She goes away and goes to the village. And what does she do? He knew everything about my life. You've got to meet him. And she becomes one of the first ambassadors of Christ because he changed her life and through his bridge building work, and people come to find him. That's the power of the image of God. So you and I, we have this responsibility, we have this opportunity, if ever before in our world and divisions and all that happening, if ever the chance that we can make this right, we can do this right, we can be bridge builders. But I want to caution you on empathy. I want to caution us on empathy. Empathy doesn't mean you take someone else's cause point blank. I've seen it over and over again. We're like, I can't believe those people are this way. Well, that is wrong. And then what they do is they run to that person and they don't want to care about anybody else's opinion about that. And the reality is there's other parts of a story. It takes two to tango. There's situations that happen. Yes, there's people that are victimized, and it's horrible, horrible, horrible. But what happens is if we don't have a broader perspective, we make it about vendetta and hate rather than being a bridge to the people that are around you. So be careful with that. Be careful with your empathy when it comes to that level, to be wise in your approach. I like what Letitia wrote in this book about bridge builders. She says, bridge builders don't deny hurt. They experience in it. They sit in it. They feel it. And when they don't stay in that pain, though, they don't allow those who wounded them to control them or constantly drive them back to anger and resentment. Instead, they allow the pain to continually push them into forgiveness. The adage, seek to understand before you're understood. But here's the powerful thing to know, and the empowerment of what we can do to bring peace is that there's a time and opportunity that we do open our mouth to speak. But as we do, be careful and calm in your communication. Be careful and calm in your communication. I shoot from the hip. You guys know, some of you know me well. That serves good because I'll point out what needs to be fixed. Not always good sometimes. And I've learned along the way, I'm getting better at it. I think, maybe not, I don't know. But I'm trying not to be just such a verbal thinker. It has burned me at times. It's affected me, but I tell you, there is a time to speak, but there's wisdom in which we speak. There's wisdom in which we do this. But one of the things that's very, very important for all of us, whatever we say, the question is, do we have a chip on our shoulder when we say it? Do we have such an agenda and such a thing that if you have a chip on your shoulder, I'm not saying you shouldn't have a cause. The causes are different. Like, that's wrong, we need to do something. But you're so bothered by it, there's resentment and bitterness toward that, and you got to speak out. You're actually speaking out on your own rather than even the cause that's there. It's not bridge building. It's actually building walls that cause more hostility. And so we need to be wise with our words and yet be firm in our faith. And Peter tells us this. He says, but in your hearts, revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that's in you. But he says, okay, give the reason, but do it with gentleness and respect. And when we do it with gentleness and respect, it means this. We got nothing to prove. Our egos are not in the way. We are confident in our peace that we have in Christ. Here's an opportunity that God will give you to speak. And when you get to do that, when you have the opportunity, you have that respect, everybody's listening, going, oh, okay, all the walls are broken down. Now this bridge is being built to reach out. But I think this is so valuable, not to blow in, blow out, say your piece and leave. Guess what? I would challenge us with this ending with being a bridge builder is this. Be consistent and committed to the relationship. Be consistent and committed to the relationship. We've all had people kind of blow in and blow out of our life. We had people like, they help us and they're like, you don't hear from them ever again. And I tell you, what I love is about people who have been in my life, lifetime friends that have been there for me. And there's people in your life that if you commit to the relationship, but they're doing this and they're going here and they're doing this. Yeah, but you still love them, right? Yeah, but no, you still love them, right? You still care for them. And you still nurture those relationships. Because I tell you, people smell fake a mile away. They smell agendas. They sense where you're trying to make an alternative. And here's the trick, the challenge as followers of Jesus. We believe in the gospel so much, and we believe that we want to see everybody in heaven, that we have that agenda for people to come to Jesus, and there's nothing wrong with that agenda. But if your relation is solely for them, they go, oh, you're just trying to become a Christian, I think we're missing ultimately our motive. Because listen to what Paul says here. Yes, they need Christ. Yes, they need Jesus. But listen to this. So he says this. So we care for you, reaching out to the church here. He says, because we love you so much, we delight to share with you not only the gospel of God, but our very lives as well. And I got that cut off in that scripture. It says, because you're so dear to us. What if we love people that way? What if we love people in a way and building bridges with people that's our agenda is that? Do they need Jesus? Absolutely. But we're not going to force it down their throat. We're just going to live it out and be the peace, to be a peacemaker. I'm going to challenge us this as we close in this week's spiritual practice, and it's this. Fill in the blank. I will be a bridge to this week. Who will it be? Will it be as you go back to work or work online, Zoom in online, or whatever you're doing work? Are you connecting with someone online? They're far different politically than you. You know, they're far different in lifestyle than you. They're living different, you know, and you have maybe not got along with them actually very well. What could you do to offer peace to them this week? How could you build a bridge? Listen to them. Start there. Don't say anything. Just listen. Ask questions. Tell me more. Begin the opportunity. Someone in your family, marriage not going good well. There's a need of reconciliation and ministry there. With a loved one, with a kid, whatever it is. There's people in your life. Who is it this week that you begin to pray about and open the opportunities to listen, be empathetic, and begin at times to speak the truth to them in love? Our team's going to come. I want to just give an opportunity to pray with you. But this ministry of reconciliation that God's called us to be Christ's ambassadors, to bring peace. It's a tall order to do that. But I want to tell you it's possible. It's possible. There is hope that we have. Jesus provided the way. He's the bridge to be able to do that. But there's hope in the lives of people I've seen many years, over the years. There was one that stood out just recently again. Chris and I were just reminded of this family that when we were first youth pastors in Seattle, just got married, and we had a wonderful youth group that we started. And there was a really solid family in church, the Millers. And the husband, he ran a very well-known hotel, CEO of a hotel in Seattle. The wife, she was the women's director in our church. And I mean, these are solid, wonderful, great teenage kids that are in our youth group. Solid family, model family, right? You would never think there's anything wrong with them. Well, they moved away, we moved away and lost track. And then you catch up on Facebook and you find out, wow, they're not together anymore. What happened? They're, different names. It's like, oh my goodness, so sad. But just a couple years ago, we were able to interact with them and find out that through just transformation, what happened, they kind of got drifted from the Lord, and they drifted to the marriage and they divorced. And I think they were divorced maybe 10 or 15 years. Come to find out that they reconciled together, and really kind of encouragement of their kids, and they got married again. And not only did they get married again, they really returned to their faith in Christ. And it just reminded me is, Lord, you can do anything. Now, some of you are here going, bro, you don't understand. I'm not getting back with my ex. That ain't happening. No, I understand circumstances. Hear me on that. Well, this ex here, I get that. But there might be some that there's an ex-friend, it's with a relative still, but there's a bad relationship. There's reconciliation the Lord wants to use you in to do that work. There's reconciliation He wants to use you in your workplace. He wants to bring the church of Jesus together to be united. No matter who we voted for, no matter what we're believing, no matter everything, it's to be one in Christ, to give honor and dignity to one another. Then when we do that, we have the opportunity to talk about the issues in our heart. I trust you and you trust me that I could share my views, and you're not going to slam the book, and you're not going to defriend me or unfriend me, unfollow me. You're going to love me all the way through, even though we don't agree. That's how God loves me. That's how God loves you. And that Jesus provided that pathway to peace on the cross that He has for us. So I want to pray for you. If you don't have peace. You don't have Jesus, no peace in your heart and life. Jesus wants to transform you from the inside to do that, and he wants you to be peacemakers. Will you pray? Can we pray that way? Let's bow together, and those are online, just pray with us here. And Lord, I come before you right now, and I sense there's some in this room, some maybe online, possibly, that they're not in a place of peace right now. They're lacking peace. And it's quite possible the reason they don't have peace is they don't have you. Jesus, no peace, no Jesus. And they would say, Jesus, I need you. To be that peace, you said that's beyond what the world offers, that you offer. And you did that work of peace, breaking the walls of hostility between us and the Father to provide that and build that bridge through the cross. And I pray for my friends here and those who are watching online that they would cross over that bridge, that you provide that peace. They would confess their sins. They would make you Lord of their life. And that, Lord, when you do that, you wipe their slate clean and brand new. They become the righteousness of God and have that true peace. So I pray that over those here. In fact, those that say, Jesus, be my peace, my Prince of Peace in my life. Change me, transform me. I want to be more like you in receiving you today. But God, I pray this is a tall order, Lord, but we pray. You've instructed us. You called us to be ministers of reconciliation. You gave us this message of the gospel to be these bridge builders, to go, Lord, and do that. May we do that this week. May we be a bridge builder to people in our neighborhood. Lord, can we believe that a person who has an opposite political view, in fact, their sign is not the sign that we would put in our yard. They might be gloating, they might be sad, we don't know, but will you, Lord, give us an opportunity to bring peace and relationship? Lord, may we handle our social media this week in such a way that builds bridges with people that are completely opposite than us. We might not agree with them, but we can love them as you loved us, as your image and image bearers of you, Lord. Lord, I pray that you give these opportunities in our church if ever before, that we could be united as one as we move together that you have in this world that we live in this week and beyond, Lord, this next year, God, that we walk as one and as we are one in you. So when we walk and live in the peace, may we be peace givers. Your wonderful, wonderful shalom to this world that desperately, desperately needs you. As we do that, even for one another, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. I invite you to stand as we close here today. I have a feeling that something touched a nerve for you today and a sensitive topic of this, but I'll let you argue with Scripture. There's a call that we have to be peacemakers. There's wisdom in which we do that. And so I know that's a challenge for some of us. Internally, there's a challenge. How are we doing? How are we to live? And so I wanted to say this. We'd love to have a conversation with you more after myself. There'll be folks in the back to move toward prayer. How can we pray together? In fact, online, Josh is there online with you, and he'd love to interact with you and pray with you as well. But as we wrap this up and as we sing this song, will you sit in this moment? Will you sit in to reflect the goodness and the peace that Christ gives you, and just begin to pray. Say, Lord, help me this week to be peacemakers. Not from a view of looking back and what's going on. How do I get in the valley? How do I get in the battle? Saying, Lord, I want to bring that peace to the people that truly, truly need you. Let's do that together. Have a great day.